And okay. Hey guys, so I wanted to give you the heads up here. Bill is going to be talking for about 20 minutes and teaching us a little bit more about trucking. During that time, please do not put us on hold.
Jennifer Bass.
Recorded so we can watch this later if need be, and we can also use this for a teaching tool later on. We will open up the floor to questions after the call. And so Bill will open it up to you guys. You can ask any questions that you have. Please save all of your questions for the end. You can either ask them directly to Bill, or you can use the little chat icon. If you look at your screen, there is a little chat bubble in the corner of your free conference call that you can type in there, and you can type a question directly to Bill so that he would be the only one that would be able to see that if you want to keep it an anonymous question. All right, guys?
Yep. I also have my instant messenger open if you need to use that for any reason.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Guys. Bill, if you're ready, go ahead.
All right. So I was trying to figure out how to approach this. So from just kind of what I decided was I would approach this first one as far as, like, if you're working with a customer, trying to figure out what their needs are, and then kind of how to drill down on that. And so a lot of this is just going to be about, first of all, what kind of basic requirements do they have as far as the driver's license goes, and then once we figured that out, getting more in particular in the kind of vehicle that they're doing. Let's see here. Here we go. Always the first kind of question you're asking when you're dealing with them is what kind of truck are they going to operate? And I just kind of started from the smallest to the largest because it works. Everything is, as you get bigger, everything's backwards compatible. In other words, if I've got, and you'll see this, as the licenses go up, they can drive everything that we've covered so far. So the first one that I started out with is the smallest trucks. And the most common thing is going to be the little box trucks. I deal with LKQ delivering auto parts. I think that Tampa deals with Southern Wine and Spirits, and I believe those trucks are not CDL. They are chauffeur license, or what some states call it a Class C. But the thing with that is it's a truck, and I actually have the weight wrong in here. I need to fix this. It's 16,000 pounds. The truck has a gross vehicle weight rating of 16,000 pounds, but less than 26,001. And the only way to know that is to actually look on the truck. Most of them are on the driver's side door. And it'll have a thing. Your passenger car has one on it. If you open the driver's side door, there's a little sticker in there that says the gross vehicle weight rating on the vehicle. So a lot of companies use these, especially like your supply houses. Electrical supply houses are very common to use these. I know that Norandex has a few of these vehicles. Ferguson has some, but Ferguson is mostly CDL. But they have some pickup trucks and stuff. And kind of the reason for this is anything that's used in commerce. In other words, it's used to make money. Then that truck is going to require something more than just a regular driver's license. And I put some pictures on here just give you an idea. The small box trucks, the step vans, even small stake bed trucks. Those would all could require a chauffeur's license to be used because they're being used to make money. Once your customer identifies, hey, this is the kind of truck I have, I've actually had customers go, you start talking to them, and they don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's a CDL or if it's a chauffeur. Some of them really don't know, and so you kind of have to drill down on that. And get that figured out. On your CDLBs, so it has gross vehicle weight rating of over 26,001 pounds. Got an extra zero in there. Thought I fixed that. And I kind of showed this truck that's there. If you notice, it's got 2 axles in the back. That's almost a dead giveaway that truck is going to be a CDL truck. Not 100%, but about 90% of the time, that's going to be a CDL truck. They could be little flatbed trucks, or even your dump trucks. The biggest thing that I always say about these is they don't bend. They're one single vehicle. They're solid. They don't bend in the middle. That's going to be a CDL-B truck. And again, if a guy has a CDL-B, he can drive the smaller trucks as well. It's backwards compatible on that. CDL-A. This is 26,001 pounds and greater on the gross vehicle weight rating, but it's more than one unit. It bends in the middle. And that could be anything from our dry vans, flatbeds, reefer trailers. I know we've dealt with Sharp and S&H. Both of those are reefer companies. And so, that's the most basic thing to identify with the customers is, hey, what kind of license is this guy going to need to have? Once you've established that, then you start getting into, okay, once I establish that, then I can start drilling down on the driver. So just to make this a little bit interactive, got the question out there, what kind of truck, what kind of license would this require? Anybody?
A hazmat.
So this would be a CDL-B truck. It would require hazmat endorsement, but if you look, the axle is way back towards the back of the truck. The 2 axles, it is not going to bend in the middle. So that's going to be a CDL-B. What about this one?
That's an A with a hazmat.
That is definitely an A with a hazmat. What about this?
A.
Not without a trailer.
Good answer.
A regular driver's license.
So right now, as it sits here, it's a CDL-B. But once it's hooked to a trailer, it becomes a CDL-A. And that's important. One of my customers is Manheim. And we move trucks around from them. We go pick them up in Ohio, bring them back to the auction, that kind of thing. And when if the truck is just a bobtail unit, I can send a CDL-B driver over to do that run. So kind of, sometimes you get into these little things, but it's things that we can think about where we can help the customer out. Hey, if they just need to move the trucks only around, and we got a CDL-B driver sitting, we can help them with that. We don't have to have an A for that as it stands. So kind of the next question and thing that you want to think about with a customer is, okay, we established what kind of driver's license the guy's got to have. Okay, what kind of trucks do they have? And what kind of a background are we going to look for? Now, I'm going to tell you, anybody that has a CDL license is probably going to be able to drive a box truck. Now, there are some exceptions for that. If all they've ever done is drive a bus, they're going to struggle to deliver freight. And the reason is, when you're driving a bus, you very seldom have to back up. When you're delivering freight, you got to back up all the time. And so that does create issues. You have to kind of look at that. But, the box truck is kind of the most basic of trucks. But you're going to want to ask certain questions like, is the driver going to have to hand unload? Are they going to have to use a 2-wheel dolly? Will they have to use a pallet jack? And every driver out there wants to be a steering wheel holder. He wants to drive down the road, back into the dock, never have to touch freight. But it's important to ask those questions because a lot of guys will take themselves out of the mix if they find out they got to work. So that's something important always to ask the customer is how involved is the driver in getting the freight off the truck and what does that look like? Kind of the next one is reefer trailers. Most likely the driver is going to be extremely involved in the unloading of this. That is that is based on my past experience. You will have some locations that will, unload their freight, but most of the time the driver is going to be involved. Sometimes it's just a pallet jack. Sometimes they got to pick through the freight and get what goes to each customer. Some things of note with reefer trailers. One is the picture on the right side, upper picture, that's a control box. You actually set the temperature on this. Most of the reefer units will have a red and a green light on the left-hand side. So when the driver's looking in his mirror on the driver's side, if he sees a red light, that tells him that there's something wrong with the reefer unit and it's out of temperature range and needs to take some immediate action. So guys that are running reefer trailers, they got to pay a little bit more attention. They got to have a little bit of smarts about them. The lower picture on there, what I've shown, they'll have, some customers will actually have bulkheads. And this was real common with S&H. They would have bulkheads. And what that does, it actually separates temperature zones within the trailer. So the very front part would be freezer. The back part would be, the middle part rather, would be cooler, and then the back part would be dry. And what they're doing is keeping those temperatures separated so that doesn't mess with the freight. So you don't want your lettuce frozen, but you want it cool, so it would go in the middle section. But these are things that you're going to want to look at if you're getting into a reefer company, like, hey, do the drivers have to put in bulkheads? What kind of things do you have set up on teaching guys to use the reefer? Do you want them to have reefer experience? Because obviously these are temperature controlled and these are loads that can go bad. Get back over here. Flatbeds. This is another pretty common trucking, and I know that we get a lot of requests for flatbed drivers, and they're hard to find because flatbeds aren't necessarily equal, I should say, not evil. You can have a straight truck, upper left, that can be a flatbed. Norandex has those. Ferguson has those. The regular tractor trailer flatbeds. The one on the lower left, that's a drop deck. That's usually used to haul equipment. And then the one on the lower right, that's called a curtain side trailer. And it actually can function as both a flatbed and a regular dry van trailer that you would back into a dock. And we're finding some companies are going to this because sometimes they deliver to customers' docks and sometimes they're delivering to job sites. But if you get into a flatbed company, again, there's certain questions you're going to want to ask that the drivers are going to want to know. Are you using straps or chains? Most people are using straps, but a lot of your steel haulers will use chains because the steel can cut the straps. Drivers want to know that. Chains are obviously a lot heavier than the straps, and so they want to know, hey, what am I dealing with? Tarps. Drivers will, if it's a flatbed driver, he'll always want to know, hey, am I going to have to tarp this? The reason for that is the tarps are really, really heavy. Lumber tarps are probably weigh somewhere around 75 pounds, and you're trying to get those up on top of a load and drag them around, and it's not a lot of fun. Tankers are another one. We don't get a whole lot of requests for tankers, but we do get those, and there's some special things. A guy that's only driven dry vans is going to be very surprised when he drives the tanker. One of the things is that when you drive a tanker, the material in the tank actually sloshes. And so that'll actually, if you don't time it right, it makes it hard to shift gears. It'll push the truck when you're trying to stop. I've seen a lot of accidents in tankers where a guy will get stopped and everything's fine, and then the liquid goes to the back of the truck, and then it comes forward again, and it pushes him into the car in front of him because he didn't allow enough space. So it's just things to ask. What you want to ask about tanker jobs are, do the tanks have baffles? Some people refer to the bottom picture as a milk tanker. Some people refer to that as a torpedo because milk tankers can't have baffles. If you have baffles in a milk tank, it'll turn it to butter. Because if you look at the picture on the upper right-hand corner, that's showing a picture of baffles within a tank. So it's just a wall in there that has holes for it that slows the liquid down so you don't get sloshed bad. Fuel tankers actually are divided compartments. They can carry on there, I've seen them have 4 different compartments, so they can carry diesel fuel, regular, the mid-grade, and high test, all on one truck. So, again, it's a matter of trying to glean from the customer, hey, what are you looking at? Because some guy, if a guy's driven a tanker before, but all he's ever driven is fuel tank, and say it's a milk operation or an operation that doesn't have baffles in the tank, he's still going to be surprised by the amount of slosh he gets out of that tank that doesn't have baffles or division in it. So again, it's a matter of, making sure you know what the customer wants. Dump trucks. Just because a guy has a CDLB, a dump truck operator might not want this guy. They have some special dangers about them. Regular dump truck is the upper left-hand corner. It's pretty straightforward, but you can see by the bed up in the air, one of the things that you commonly have to look for is overhead clearance. There have been tree limbs and stuff that snag on those and just stand a truck up in the air. The upper right-hand corner, that's a triaxle truck. That third axle actually has to be raised and lowered. Like it has to be raised if a guy's making a turn. Those operators will leave that axle up when the truck's not loaded, but when the truck's loaded, that goes down. But if they go to make a turn, they have to raise that axle up or it will do a lot of damage to the truck. So, again, it's kind of getting in, making sure we're asking the right questions. Lower left-hand corner, that's a side dump. Don't see a lot of those, but they are around, and you have to be real careful and make sure that doesn't tilt over too fast because it will turn the truck over on its side. Bottom right-hand corner is I call it a trailer dump. It's a semi-trailer. It's a Class A license with a dump trailer. And if you see how high that is in the air, it is very easy to turn that truck over on its side. So, again, it's one of those things, kind of knowing the special dangers that go with it and really getting the customer to give you some feed on what they're looking for and making sure that we understand that. These are just a few. These are the kind of most common ones that we see that I've tried to cover. But if you look at this picture, there are so many different kinds of trucks and configurations out there. You may run into something. It's just a matter of really making sure we're asking the right questions. And if you don't know, you can always call me and say, hey, this is what the kind of truck we're getting into. Is there anything I should be on the lookout for? To make sure that we're asking the customer the right questions and then getting the right driver out to them. So that kind of ends my portion of talking. If anybody's got any questions, I'm open to that.
I got a question.
Bill, I have a question.
Okay.
You were talking about when it's a Class A but without the trailer that B drivers can operate them, but doesn't that require double clutching for those types of vehicles? Most B drivers aren't trained in that.
Well, but some are because some of the CDLB trucks have 10-speed transmissions in it, just like the CDLA trucks. So it's a legit question, but that's not necessarily a question for the customer. In this case, what we'd be asking the customer is, hey, are you just trying to move the truck, or is he going to have a trailer too? Then you could make that decision, but you would have to ask the driver, hey, do you know how to double clutch?
Okay, because when I got my CDL, they didn't teach us anything about that. That's why I was curious.
Well, you should have gone to a better school.
Someone didn't get their money's worth.
That's right.
Well, I wasn't going for A. I only got a B. We didn't go over any double clutch.
Wow. So, but no, I mean, I have customers that have, they had a 13-speed and two 10-speeds, and they were transmissions just like in any of the tractor trailers. But you're right, not all CDLB drivers know how to do that.
All right, so that's definitely something to inquire about.
Right.
Thank you, Bill.
No problem.
Too, Bill.
Okay.
The landscaping companies that we work with, they'll have the landscaping truck like we saw that you had the picture, but they'll also be selling a 26 to 20-foot trailer behind it. Is there any other certs that they're going to need for that?
Okay, so can you ask me that question again? You kind of broke up in the middle.
Okay. The question I had was with the landscaping trailers. If they've got a landscaping truck that's like one of the ones that you were showing with the Class C license, but they want to tow a 26-foot trailer or a 20-foot trailer behind it to carry more gear, will they need any kind of CDL for that? Or will they still be able to be qualified on like a CDL-C or CDL-B?
Well, it will depend on the trailer. So in that case, you have to get into what's the gross vehicle weight rating for the trailer as well, and then what do they look like together. And I will apologize to you that I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but that is something that you have to look at. Usually, if the trailer is rated at less than 10,000 pounds, you're going to be fine. Because I know sometimes they'll use like a little, stake bed truck or something like that, and then they'll pull a trailer that they can put the lawnmowers and stuff on. And most of those trailers are going to be under 10,000 pounds, and you would still be fine with a C, with a chauffeur's license. But if the rating on that trailer is a little high, then yeah, you could be getting into a situation where it requires a CDL.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody in here? Anybody send anything through chat, Bill?
All right. So kind of what I was, I'm looking for suggestions going forward on what people would like to see covered, whether it's analyzing an MVR, really kind of poking holes in a guy's application, like things that you can see that'll kind of indicate an issue of some sort. If you guys will let me know what you want to see, then I can kind of tailor this and have it be the most beneficial.
Without operator's license, like for forklifts.
What's that now?
Without operator's license for like forklifts.
Actually, that is controlled by OSHA, and typically, and I haven't read the OSHA regs for a while, but typically OSHA requires that each company certify their people individually that they can operate a forklift. Now, a lot of companies want to see, hey, this guy, was certified in forklift, but to be in compliance, they have to do their own certification anyway.
Okay.
I would need to look at that and verify that, but that's my understanding. But that's all controlled again by OSHA, not the BMV and not under federal reg, not under this federal reg.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Bill, I think it would be helpful to do what you had mentioned about maybe pulling up a bunch of different resumes or 10 years and kind of going through that. I think that would be super helpful for a lot of people.
Okay. I can absolutely do that.
Pointing out what looks good, what's a red flag, what's wrong, really analyzing it so people can look at it and start to learn how to ask the right questions.
Okay. I can absolutely do that.
And also steer away from high explosive fuel tankers.
Hey, this stuff pays a premium.
Anybody else have anything to add or questions to ask?
One thing I'd probably like a little bit of review on with it is a little bit about some of the endorsements that we can expect people to order or have needs for, what the driver's requirements are going to be for them on their own, what they've had to go through for it.
All right. Absolutely. And that's kind of what I wanted to approach this is, what we can do from the customer standpoint, and then I want to get over into, the driver side of it too, what we're trying to do on that. All right?
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bill, nice job, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank
Later,
you.
man.
Bye-bye.